You have the origins of the Faceless Men all wrong. LJ here. I'm looking for someone to debate and feel free to argue with me. In this video, I'm going to explore the true origin of the Faceless Men. Hi, LJ here. I'm back to do another Faceless Man video because that is all I do on YouTube. So to go over my initial videos, the first one I did was titled The Faceless Men Were at the Tower of Joy, and I believe I gave enough solid concrete evidence that I found throughout the text to support that theory. If you haven't listened to it yet, it's worth a listen. It has views that I have never seen another YouTuber have before. I did have a second video, but I kind of mislabeled it. I called it The Origins of the Faceless Men, but we all know the book Origins of the Faceless Men. I should have said how we've been misinterpreting the origins of the Faceless Men, because I believe I've taken from the text and I know the actual true origins that we have been missing the entire time because of how George writes. He's very secretive, he plants breadcrumbs, and sometimes we miss them. So there's that. I did do a third video, and it was regarding why Jack and Hagar was in the black cells. I do not know if anyone else has had this theory, but I think I did a pretty good job with that video. My videos are never high quality. They're never going to be high quality, but what I mean is I presented a good argument. That is the only video that I did not have a lot of proof from the books. I didn't, but it makes logical sense, and logic in a way is its own evidence. So I may be lacking book evidence, but the logic in that video is undeniable in my mind. Okay, so as I'm going to do every single time I do a video is I'm going to thank those who came before me. First being Preston Jacobs. I really liked his videos. I listened to him when, I was in a really turbulent state of mind sometimes, and just he took me away, and I love that. Second is Order of the Green Hand. They were not always accurate, but I think that the community needed their viewpoints because it was growing a little stale for a while. And then there was Gemma from The Secrets of the Citadel. I couldn't remember her name with my initial video, but someone in the comments was really nice, and they pointed out who they thought it might be, and I instantly remembered the name and Secrets of the Citadel. So I went to her page, and I was all excited, and she had taken down all her videos, which is a shame. I don't remember a single theory from her. I just know that she was good. She had great videos, and I liked her voice. And if you know Gemma, just tell her she's awesome. She did a great job. I don't know why she took down her videos, because as I said, I don't remember them, but I know that they were solid. And also, I would like to thank Matt. He was my original Song of Ice and Fire friend, where we would discuss our theories. He introduced me to the PJ videos, and I'm very thankful for that, because, this sounds kind of dumb, but a Song of Ice and Fire theories have encompassed a large part of my life. I know that sounds so dumb, but I used to listen to them in cars. I used to listen to them when I was with my child because they were a baby, and it just kind of took me away. So it's been a long time since I've actually listened to theory videos, because I'm just going to be honest, the show really turned me off the last couple seasons, and it just, every time I would revisit A Song of Ice and Fire, it just felt really sad to me. But somehow in the last a couple months, I went back, and lo and behold, I have all these theories that I want to get out. So there's that. I'm also going to mention this. I have a speech impediment. So if you can't understand me, I totally get it. I can't always understand myself. Sometimes my words slur. Sometimes things come out very awkwardly, and I fumble with my words. It's gotten comical to me at this point, but it is what it is, and you don't have to listen to me. So if you don't like listening to people with speech impediments, just go ahead and turn it off. You're not missing anything that deep. Also, on top of that, I have hearing loss, so I'm falling apart. I have no business doing a YouTube. I have the worst communication. I can't receive information, and I can't give it very well either. So here we are. Because I hate speaking in front of people because of all the impediments. I tried spamming a bunch of YouTubers. I sure did. I tried spamming a bunch of YouTubers, and it's embarrassing looking back. Not one of them messaged me back, and that's super embarrassing. I was rude. Like, you shouldn't go spamming people you don't know. It's impolite. And I'm sorry that I did that. If you received one of my messages, it was all because I didn't want to have to do this myself. But it is what it is. And I am excited to share with you this theory. Okay, so there's one line that has provoked a lot of my research for the Faceless Men, and that line is the Faceless Men didn't like slavery. It sounds kind of obvious because the Faceless Men were supposedly former slaves, but for some reason it lingered in my mind a little bit, and I thought about it, and it didn't make logical sense with the story, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment, but I just wanted you to know that that was the singular statement that provoked all of this research. Okay, so the Faceless Men were founded 400 before conquest in the Valerian freehold. The original Faceless Man would hear all of the prayers of the slaves praying for death, and he determined that they were all praying to the same deity, the many-faced god, which was an incarnate of all the death gods, like the stranger and such. So this is where I believe the first misconception comes from. As I said earlier, the question or the line that provoked all of this research was that the Faceless Men did not like slavery, and I do not think that is true. I don't think they really care much about slavery, because I think the original Faceless Man, I don't think he was a slave. I think he was, drumroll, he was a Boshi priest. And let me tell you all of the evidence I found on that. To prove my theory, I have to start by telling you about Bosch and the Boshi. The Boshi worshiped the blind god named Bosch, and it was a religion founded in the Valerian freehold. At two separate times, there has been an exodus of the Boshi from the Valerian freehold. One happened at about 1322 before conquest, and they left the Valerian freehold and settled on Lorath. And then there was a second exodus, and that happened about 436 before conquest. And once again, they left the Valerian freehold and settled on Lorath again. I do need to tell you that Lorath has a ton of mazes and labyrinths where they put their temples and their towns in. I guess the maze makers were there before they got there, and like ancient Planetos. History lesson time. The Boshi worship Bosch, who is the blind god, and they believe that darkness can help open their third eye, which is a common theme throughout A Song of Ice and Fire, where someone with magical abilities might have them awaken after either extreme darkness or a traumatic event. They also self-abnegate. What this means is they don't say like me, you, they say a boy or a girl. They just don't have a strong sense of identity, and the lords even think it's vulgar to refer to themselves as like a proper pronoun or like I or me. So there's also an emphasis on equality. They believe in extreme equality among men, women, lords, peasants, animals, and they don't even eat the flesh of animals, and they don't drink wine. So they kind of, in a way, like value life above all. Equality, life, and that is something that is going to be very important later on in my theory. On top of that, their priests are eunuchs, and they wear eyeless hoods in honor of their god. Remember, the Boshi is the blind god, and they believe that darkness can help awaken their third eye. So there is that. And let's see what else. I believe I've gone over the most important things about them. As I've said previously, they occupied the mazes that were already there, made by the maze makers in Lorath, and I know that the religion was around at 1322 years before the Doom. But I'm not sure when exactly it was founded. One more thing about the Boshi and that is that over time their religion and their beliefs became corrupted, and the priests became fat, and they had started forsaking their own rules and values. One thing that I didn't mention is they had worn hair shirts, which is something that Ariahota wore, and they stopped wearing those. And they grew rich from taxes and such, and there was a rebellion of the lower classes, and that caused many of the Boshi to be slaughtered, and there were some that were able to escape to an island of Lariasin, which is like right by Lorith, and it had encompassed them in their mazes for a while before they died out. Now it's time to go over general information about the Faceless Men. They are a group of assassins, pretty much a religious sect. I guess you would call that a cult. And they do contracted kills, so they take money or not just money, something valuable, and then they will go and kill their target. They live in the House of Black and White, which is built over a maze, and that is incredibly important to my theory because over in Lorath, where the Boshi settled, they also lived on, like, in the mazes and stuff. So that is just a breadcrumb connecting the two. They practice their own form of self-abnegation by discarding their identity entirely. They also use blindness in their training when they blinded Arya Stark to help develop her warging abilities, so there's that. They employ other methods, so this is something I'm not sure about. I don't know if all of the Faceless Men are magical or just a few of them are. I just have no idea because I know that they use glamours and stuff, but they also have ones that like go around in costumes and stuff, like and other things. So it's possible that all of them are magical or a few of them are magical, or it's somewhere like in between where some of them have like a little bit of magic but not a lot. So I'm not really going to go into that because I don't know. So let's talk about face wearing now. So what the Faceless Men will do is they will drink a potion, and then their faces will be cut, and they'll press a dead person's face onto theirs, and it will make them not only assume the identity looks-wise, but they will experience some of the emotions and the memories of the person that they just took on. And that is very interesting, and I have theories regarding that, but that's a whole other video. So there's that. It's very important to note that they flay people, which is something the Boltons do. I think it was Preston Jacobs that introduced me to the thought that the Boltons and the Faceless Men were of the same, like, origins of some sort. Magic stolen, or maybe same genetic link. I have no idea, but it's very obvious that they are doing the same thing based on the texts. Or at some point the Boltons had done that. I think they still are, but that's for another video. Okay, so that is the one more thing. The Faceless Men are freaking liars. Like, they lie all the time. They lie about everything. And like in the text, and I'm not going to pull the exact verbiage, but basically it's like, oh, we don't do collateral damage. That's not true. Pate was collateral damage. They will kill people that have nothing to do with their mission. So there is certainly collateral damage done. And on top of that, they're not altruistic in like what they're doing, or they say that they're self-abnegating and they have no identity, but they are doing stuff to further the Faceless Men as a whole. Like, they're not just taking on contracted jobs. And let me explain why. House Rogaire was back after the Dance of Dragons. Like, House Rogaire had married one of their daughters into the Targaryens, and they were on lists, and they had like the most powerful bank. I believe the bank at that point was more powerful than the Braavosi Bank, which we all know the Faceless Men in Braavos probably have a strong connection with the Braavosi Bank, the Iron Bank. So House Rogaire is gaining a shit ton of power because not only do they have a very powerful bank that rivals the Iron Bank, but they have their daughter in the line of succession of the Targaryens. She is not in the line, but her children are. So you have this family that is becoming incredibly powerful, and then all of a sudden it is rumored that a Faceless Man takes out multiple patriarchs of the family, and that family has fallen. That was not a contracted job. It was definitely done in the self-interest of the Faceless Men. I'm willing to put money on it. So, fight me about it if you want. But what that proves is that they act within their own self-interest. And I do think there is a greater agenda to the Faceless Men. I don't know what that agenda is. I have no idea what their end game is, but I feel like there is something that they're working towards. And this thought started when I realized that there was a Faceless Man at the Tower of Joy. They are there for a reason. They are doing things for a reason. They are moving people around on like the chessboard for a reason. I just don't know what that reason is. Maybe I'll figure it out. Now we're going to go over the true history of the Faceless Men and how we've been misinterpreting it this entire time. Okay, so it starts 400 years before conquest in the Valerian Freehold. We have a Boshi priest that goes around and he hears the prayers of the slaves. He starts to believe that they are all praying to the same deity, the many-faced God, and that God encompasses all the incarnates of like the death gods. So there's that. Then he comes across a slave that is praying for death, and he gives him the gift of death, and that is the very first man the Boshi priest, who is the original Faceless Man, kills. And then sometime later, there's another slave that is praying for his slaver to die. And this is where I think a misconception happens. So we're told that he says that he'll kill the slaver as long as the guy joins him, which is textually correct, but I think we've been misinterpreting it. I think what actually happened is he agreed to kill the slaver, but that second slave had to give up his face. So instead of becoming a faceless man, that slave had his little husk removed. The original Faceless Man put the husk on and went and killed the slave. Why does that make sense? Because that slave probably had access to the master, and the Boshi priest probably, wouldn't have easily been able to do the kill without taking on and assuming another identity. So we have the first kill, we have the second kill, and technically there's a third kill because, there's the person that gave up his face, and then there's the slaver. So that happens. And then at some time around when the Faceless Men were founded at 400 BC, there is the original exodus from, correction, it's not the original because there had been an exodus at least 1300 before the Doom where many of the Boshi went to Lorath. So at 400 before conquest, there is an additional exodus from the Valerian Freehold. And so many of the Boshi were on the boats leaving, along with other slaves. It's not just the Boshi. So they left and they went in around and they landed on what is now known as Bravos. So they founded Bravos. And among those people were the original Faceless Men, the Boshi priest. And they settled and formed the House of Black and White, which is made on labyrinths, which I've already tell you why that is significant. Or I've already told you, yeah. Also, in the text, it says that about 436 slaves left Valeria and they ended up on Lorath. Boshi slaves went to Lorath. I actually think they were part of the same group. This is kind of what I think happened. So picture it. You're worshiping the Boshi and you're like, yay, we're no longer in the Valerian Freeholds. And so you're going and you go to Bravos, and your little Boshi priest who, you highly respect is like, yeah, let's go and we're going to find this house. It's the Black and White. And then you find out, that instead of valuing life, he is like valuing death. And you're like, oh no, what is this? And so I think those Boshi that wanted to stay true to their initial beliefs then left and landed on Lorath at around 436 before conquest. So there's like some time in between there, but I think it kind of works like that. And I kind of think it's a little funny if you think about it. So that is how I think the original situation happened in regards to the Faceless Men being founded. I think it was a Boshi priest that formed a bastardized version of the Boshi religion that we now know as the Faceless Men. Now I'm going to circle back to the original statement that made me research the Faceless Men, and that was that the Faceless Men did not like slavery. I just don't think they care about slavery, and I'm going to explain why. So first and foremost, I do not believe the original Faceless Man was a slave. I believe he was a Boshi priest, and I believe I have proven that through my theory, and I don't necessarily think that the religious figures in the Valerian Freehold were necessarily slaves. So going to get that out of the way. It was not founded by a slave. It was founded by a religious person that bastardized their own religion. And so then I'm also going to set the stage for 400 before conquest. I don't think the Faceless Men, if they are recruiting, I don't think they would recruit from slaves. And this is my reasons why. First and foremost, the Faceless Men seem to try to recruit magical people, such as Jack and Hagar and Arya Stark. There are other people in the House of Black and White that seem to have magical abilities. As I said, I don't know if they all do. And so that is the baseline for joining a Faceless Men, is to either be incredibly clever or to be really, really good at magic, or something in between that. I don't think that they're just going around looking at slaves and being like, that guy would make a really good Faceless Man. I just don't see that as happening. So you're 400 before conquest, and you are in a world with fucking dragons everywhere, which means that there is probably a lot of magic in the world, which means there is probably a lot of magical people. So I think the first people they would have mined from would be the magical Valerians that didn't love Valeria. So I don't necessarily think that they were going to all the slaves being like, which one of these malnourished slaves is going to be really good at being a Faceless Man. I think they were like, where's the dissonant? Where are these unhappy people that have magical abilities? And I also think, because the whole world was probably magical at this point, that they were looking at other places in Essos, and if they had gone over to Westeros at that time, which I do think they may have because of Bolton. But anyways, going back to the theory at hand. So we're in this world 400 before conquest, and there are magical people everywhere. I think that the Faceless Men were looking for the most magically adept people to join their ranks, which is why I don't think they care about slavery, because I don't think many slaves were Faceless Men. And on top of that, the doom of Valeria happened 122 before conquest. I believe. I don't have the number right in front of me. So Faceless Men were founded in 400. Braavos was founded around 400. And 200 years later, the doom of Valeria happened. I don't think they were waiting around for 200 years being like, we finally got him. I don't think that at all. I don't think anyone that was alive during the initial founding of the Faceless Men was really alive during the time that the doom happened. It's possible that their husks were still around, and it is possible that someone extended their life magically. I'll totally give them that. But I don't think that any of the Faceless Men that were around at 122 before conquest were actual slaves at all. I think that they were the magical people that they mined from all of the lands of Planetos. So you have this group of people that we assume hated slavery, but in reality, they probably didn't have much carings for slavery. They didn't think one way or the other, because most of them were not slaves. They were magical beings. And on top of that, we still have slavery in Planetos. We have the Dothraki, which, a slave culture. We have Volantis, who tattoos their slaves' faces, and we have the Unsullied, which it's atrocious what they do. And because of the magical abilities of the Faceless Men, they could have disrupted all of those slave trades pretty easily. It's not even it's not even that far-fetched that a whole group of magical assassins could disrupt the slave trades many times over. Would they be able to eliminate it? Maybe not, but it seems like they didn't even care to try. So that is I don't even know why I went off on this tangent. Oh, is to explain the whole how I got started on the whole Faceless Men don't care about slavery thing. And also, I make fun of that, but the person that came up with that theory is deeply logical. Like, they hit the nail on the head in so many ways if you take the text of Westeros at face value. But George is wormy, and he doesn't always tell the whole truth when he writes, and sometimes we have to look for breadcrumbs, and this is where those breadcrumbs led me. So now I've made it to the point where I just weave together the two entities and tell you how similar they are and where their differences lie. So first and foremost, we're going to go over how the Bosch worship the blind god, and they think that darkness can help open the third eye, and we know for a fact that the Faceless Men will blind their acolytes in order to help them develop their skills. We also know that the Boshi on Lorath live inside of mazes left over by the maze makers, and funny enough, the Faceless Men have a temple that is built over mazes made by the maze makers. That part I am assuming. I just know that it is on mazes. So there's that. They both believe in self-abnegation in different ways. With the Lorath, they say a boy, a girl, a woman, a man. In regards to the Faceless Men, they just discard their identities. So that is just very telling because it is weirdly similar. Now, this part is where it's like I say that the Faceless Men is a bastardized version of Bosch, and this is why. The Bosch believe all life is sacred, and the Faceless Men believe death is sacred. So that original Boshi priest bastardized the concept of life and death. Instead of thinking that life was sacred, he heard all these prayers and began to believe the opposite. So that is a strong connector. Also, I'm not going to include the slide. I don't think maybe I will, but what is important is that both the Faceless Men and Lorath both have coins. And you just don't hear, well, you do hear a lot about the currency of A Song of Ice and Fire and Planetos, but like for two distinct cultures to both have their own coins, and the coins are shown in texts, that's just significant because we don't see that all the time, and I believe it's a breadcrumb left by George. So the Faceless Men have that coin with the sayings on it, and the Boshi and the Lorath have this coin where there's a maze on it, and then there's like a sun and a moon, and it's a duality similar to the Faceless Men black and white logo that they have, and I just thought that was very telling and very interesting, and it was definitely something linking the two. Now I'm going to get into the next part, which I think, one more thing before this next part. Jorah Mormont mentions that Lorath is culturally, or not culturally, but economically insignificant. Why does that matter? Because there's a lot of dualities in A Song of Ice and Fire, and there's a lot of dualities between the Faceless Men. One values life, the other one, or the Faceless Men versus Bosch. One values life, one values death, you know that. The Faceless Men are very economically significant because they have ties to the Bank of Bravos. And so to say that the Lorath is economically insignificant is a duality. And I also want to add, like, George has huge texts, but a lot of his lines matter. He doesn't just throw something in there that doesn't make sense. It may take you 3 books to realize why this one line in book 1 matters, but eventually you find out it matters. For him to just willy-nilly say, like, oh, Lorath is economically insignificant, I refuse to believe there isn't a reason why he said that, and I think it was a breadcrumb left by him for us to connect the Faceless Men to the Boshi and Lorath. So that is what I think on that. And so now I'm going to go to a more tinfoily thought that I have regarding the connection between the Faceless Men and the Lorathi. And it's okay if you do not agree with me on this, but I think it has something to do with Jack and Hagar. First and foremost, I'm just going to say it. I think Jack and Hagar is the original Faceless Man. I think he was the original Boshi priest. I believe that strongly. And people might be like, why do you believe that? First and foremost, he's a Lorathi criminal, so he is the biggest breadcrumb, and he is the first Faceless Man that we are introduced to. So that is a significant thing. He is, ironically, the very first one we are introduced to ties to the whole origin story that I've kind of put together. So that's the first thing. And when I say he is the first one, he could just be the husk. I'm not saying that the same body is walking around for 600 years. He just might be the husk. So get that out of the way. Second, and this is the little breadcrumb that I think a lot of you might argue with me about, but his hair is dyed one half one color, one half another color. And a lot of people might be like, oh, it's dyed like a faceless man. But that would not be true, because faceless men do not go around planetos being like, hey, you guys, I'm a faceless man. Come check me out. No, they do not want to be considered a faceless man. They want to be anonymous. They want to be no one. So that means that for a Lorathi criminal to have one half of his hair one color and one half of his hair the other color, that means that that is something common in Lorath, which means that they also have an additional duality. They might do their hair, one half one color, one half the other. So he is wearing a Lorathi fashion that also mirrors something that the Faceless Men would do, which further ties Lorath to the Faceless Men. And also, in case I didn't say this, I often use Lorathi and Boshi interchangeably, when in reality, some people that are currently in Lorath may not worship Boshi. So I apologize for any confusion, but part of the Faceless Men group ties to Lorath and part of it ties to Boshi, and they're like in the same region and area, so I apologize for using them interchangeably. So that is all of the connections that I have found, and they are not insignificant, and I think I've proven my theory quite well. But here's what I want you to do. If you do not believe me, if you do not think I've presented a good argument, I want you to get mad about it. And the reason why I want you to get mad, because nobody does better research than someone that's super angry and riled up. I want you to research the hell out of this, and I want you to give me your opposing theory. Put it in all caps. I don't care. Just get passionate. Look through the test, look for days, and then come up with something else, because I love a good debate. I love proving my points. I love when people give me a really good counter argument and having to go and argue that point. I'm not sure if any of you know, but I used to investigate fraud for a living, and I would go and get my cases together, and I would argue with a lawyer about whether or not they should, pursue charges on criminals. And so I'd have to have airtight cases, even cases that were slam dunks we didn't always pursue. But I'm going off on a tangent. I just want you to get so heated and passionate that you do an epic ton of research, and you come at me in the chat with all caps, super enraged. Make your own video and tag me, and I will watch it, and I will go and type in all caps in your comment section too. We can do that. We can become mortal enemies, because that is something I need at this stage of my life, someone to fight. So thank you for listening to me. I'm probably going to do one more section to tie up a couple loose ends that I may have not included in all these videos and stuff, because I'm not a YouTuber and I'm not very good at this. Please, please, please. I don't care if you subscribe to my channel. I don't care if you like my content, but please, if you know someone that would enjoy debating me on this, send them to my video. Thank you.